Welcome and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is our second CU Thrive event, and here at Columbia University Human Resources, great community of lifestyle and learning. Sorry, I just heard some echo feedback. And so, today we're here to all talk about financial wellness. And of course, the Consumer Financial Bureau defines financial wellness or well-being as the condition in which a person can fully meet current and ongoing financial obligations so they can feel secure in their financial future and is able to make choices that allow them to enjoy life. So financial wellness is a practical approach to managing financial health, encompassing behaviors, attitudes, and actions towards money and managing it. And it includes budgeting, savings, investing, and debt management. And so aiming for financial stability and security. So financial literacy is the foundation of it, but financial wellness is about applying that knowledge effectively to achieve your financial goals. And we're going to actually review those concepts here today with our expert panelists. And Bridget, the next slide, please. Our expert panelists actually encompass Dr. Meghaan Lurtz, who serves as a lecturer in Columbia's School of Professional Studies, is a professor of practice at Kansas State University, and serves as an adjunct assistant professor at the University of Maryland. Meghaan earned her PhD in personal financial planning from Kansas State. So thank you and welcome, Dr. Lurtz. We also have Chris Nichols. Chris serves as a subject matter expert on healthcare savings and spending strategies in employee education and communications for customers of Optum Financial. Chris is a Navy veteran of the Persian Gulf War and attended Central Connecticut State University on the GI Bill for business management. And welcome, Chris. We also have our expert Tracy Schwartz. Most recently, Tracy was a founding partner and the chief operating officer and chief compliance officer of White Oak Capital, a global equity investment firm she helped launch in 2007. Tracy previously spent 10 years at Merrill Lynch as an investment banker in mergers and acquisitions, and Tracy earned her MBA from the Harvard Business School. And next up, our final panelist is Henali Shah. Henali completed her Master of Science in Enterprise Risk Management at Columbia before transitioning to a consulting role for Deloitte. Henali is now a managing consultant at Rivian, working on their environmental, social, and governance teams. So thank you to all of our panelists for being here today. And without further ado, I do want to at least mention to our attendees here today to make sure that if you have specific questions, we're hoping to get questions in at the end of our session here today. So make sure to put them into the chat that will be monitored. So in case something comes up and you'd like to hear more about it, please put it in the chat for us. So to start us off, right, we're thinking to ourselves, what does financial wellness have to do with our overall well-being? But our overall well-being is affected by our financial wellness journey, and it's linked to our mental health. And really understanding that here today, I'm going to actually have Dr. Meghaan Lurtz, start us off. So I'm going to actually point this question at you. Where should one begin on their financial wellness journey? And, why is it important? Yeah, why is that important? There, I'll start us off. Where should one begin on their financial wellness journey?
Yeah, a big question, but a really good question. I think that for financial wellness journey and like where you should start, it's not actually a financial thing in the sense that when we feel better, we do better. And a lot of people have very unexplored relationships with money. Yet money touches so many of the things that we do. Money touches our relationships. Money touches our behavior in life. Money touches, the way we want to show up, whether it's through demonstrating status or ability or our charitable intent. Money is a conduit, for many of the things that we care about, think about, and do. And so I think one of the first places to start when we begin the process of having, establishing financial wellness, and even within the CFPB's definition that you talked about, it talked about security, talked about making decisions, and it talked about enjoying life. And I think that is a big part of it, that when we understand ourselves better in our relationships with money, we can get closer to our intrinsic motivations. We might be more motivated then to pay down debt or to save, which we probably all know on this call are important, but finding that motivation to do that, starting a budget or something else, working with other family, or working with the relationships that you have to, get things going. I think that it's really important to say, what do I think about money? Like, am I happy with my money relationship? Am I not happy with my money relationship? Are there moments when I'm sad about it or shamed about it or excited about it? And can I lean into that more? What did I learn about money? These are all interesting places that you can start in terms of your financial wellness journey. A good friend of mine, she actually studied this, or studied part of this for her dissertation. And one of the things that she found was that the emotions are first. How we feel, guides what we do. And then only later on do we, look at what people have access to. And so again, when we feel better, we do better. And so feeling better about your money, but likely everybody on this call is hoping to feel better about their money. And this is a great first step.
Thank you for sharing that. So, and why is it important for us to have a healthy relationship with money?
Because money is a part of overall well-being. There's emotional, there's physical, there's occupational, social, spiritual, intellectual, environmental, and financial. And all of these, are intersecting and overlapping bubbles or Venn diagrams, however you want to think about that. And so being healthier in finance, which oftentimes touches all of the other ones, what we know from, like, for example, positive psychology research is that our relationships matter, our positive emotions matter, feeling engaged and feeling accomplished, these things matter. And in many ways, money touches all of those respects. Money touches all of the things that we know go on to build a healthy, happy, content life. And so you could ask, people do, I get asked a lot as kind of like the token financial psychologist, well, does money buy happiness? Is that like a thing? And I quote one of my, well, actually the CEO and colleague of mine, Brian Portnoy. He wrote a book called The Geometry of Wealth. If anybody's interested, it's a lovely book. But he has a chapter in that book that's entitled, Does Money Buy Happiness? Yes, no, maybe, sort of, kind of. And I bring this up because that is exactly what the actual research shows, that, how we spend, like, does money make us happier? No, not really. Money is more so an insulator of pain. Like, it doesn't make us happy to spend money on our roof, but having money to spend on your roof when it gets blown off by a tornado, yeah, money insulates us from that pain. We do find that people that spend money on experiences, especially experiences with people that we love, and charitable intent, oftentimes related to a concept that we love, that this is a good way to spend money that quote unquote buys happiness. And then there's other research that kind of looks at it, and looks at just kind of like the day-to-day spending and how we think about it or don't think about it. And that's where kind of that maybe piece comes in. And so certainly there are ways to, especially when we understand more about our money, ways to manipulate what we're doing with our money that can get closer to that happiness and wellness, because it's absolutely a part of, like, that bigger picture of overall wellness. I can't hear you.
Sorry,
Not sure if other people. Okay.
Forgive me. So I just thank you, because that actually puts us in a good place to start us off with, like, the psychology of money in the background here today as we move into our processes of, like, financial planning and budgeting. And so I actually want to start off with Henali. Where does one start with our budgeting? Is it on our own? Would you recommend to start through a service? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. And so I think there are so many different ways to go about looking at financial planning and budgeting. But one of the easiest ways that I think that you can kick it off is by looking at a couple of months of your expenses and kind of jotting down, hey, I'm spending X amount of money on food. I'm spending X amount of money on subscription, and kind of just outlining and bucketing your expenses according to, how they're going. I recommend looking at 6 months of data, 6 months to a year, but I know that can be quite daunting depending on how many credit cards you're using and how many other financial assets you might. So if that is too daunting, quarterly or even monthly, just taking a look at, the last couple of months and identifying, hey, this is what my pattern is. Maybe you thought that you were spending only, $100 a month on your DoorDash, but it turns out you're actually spending a lot more. So really, I think it's one thing to just kind of like think about it on a day-to-day basis and say, hey, I spent $20 here or $40 here. But when you look at it over the course of a month, you can actually get a bigger picture of where you are spending your money.
That's very important, because even when you're saying creating this financial planning or budgeting, what's the most critical part of it? Is it for us to understand our household income statement, like what we're bringing in? Is it really then looking at our fixed expenses, or maybe having to worry about the ones that may change or fluctuate from month to month? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Thank you, Camilla. So I would say you really wanted to start looking at where you're putting your money overall as a household. I always say that one of the first few places you want to check out are your subscriptions, your monthly subscriptions that you have. You'd be surprised at how many times you keep a monthly subscription that you're probably not utilizing to its max potential, and B, that you probably didn't even know that you were still paying for. For example, during COVID, everyone had the Peloton membership, right? Check to see if you're still paying for some of these things that you are no longer using. And then once you've been able to kind of identify that subscription list, whether it's, Amazon, like I said, the DoorDash, your gym memberships, things like that, you're able to kind of reevaluate that list appropriately according to what works for your family and for yourself, and where you're able to really wanting to focus on, right? So maybe you're like, okay, I suggest starting out small. Maybe it's one subscription that you just kind of eliminate, or you're like, I can take away. And so it's not as daunting. It doesn't have to be this all or nothing mentality where you have to go all in and have everything figured out. I would say you want to start off small and gradually work your way up to where you're putting together this huge financial plan or huge budget that works for your household.
Very helpful. Dr. Lurtz, do you have anything to add in terms of like how to make our budget?
Yeah, I think Henali had some great points, and mine feed off of that. And just thinking about where are you spending and what you're spending. There is also what's known as a spending plan. So like a slightly different version, a slight modification, if you will, on the budget, where we're still looking at income, we're still looking at outflows, and we're still looking at identifying patterns, highlighting the needs and wants. But instead of thinking of the plan as restrictive, because that's the thing. We know this from financial psychology and behavioral economics. Loss equals pain. We never want to give up our $5 Starbucks. Like, that's the worst feeling ever. And so thinking of, okay, what matters to me? And let me put money towards that. So, if the coffee gets you up in the morning, like I'm a coffee person for sure. So like, if that's what gets you up in the morning, do not give that up, but think of what you could give. So like, think of, where do I want to spend? What's important for my spending? Like what when I spend this way, like, does that bring me joy? And then look at the places where you spend where it doesn't bring you joy. And if you are able to cut those, then, and focus on the things that really matter to you in terms of your spending, then it essentially does the exact same thing, but it's a less painful way to envision the budgeting process. So you can look up spending plan, personal spending plan, and there are instructions everywhere online for how to do that. But I find, and in my work with past clients in financial therapy space, creating a spending plan is a bit more fun than creating a budget.
Sure. Thank you for that. Absolutely. And I actually kind of want to transition us a little bit when we're thinking about financial planning, right? We have Chris here. And Chris, can you kind of show us a little bit of insight when it looks like into creating a financial plan, but using a little bit of a difference in, in the work, in the world that you do? We'll wait for
I think
Chris.
he might be muted.
Sure. Tracy, let me know if you have also anything to add. Well, in terms of like budgeting. Oh,
Hear me now?
yes, we can.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I am having technical difficulties on my end. So you were talking about budgeting. So specifically to the product that we offer, the HSA, the HSA should be used as part of your financial planning because that product, unlike an FSA, for example, an HSA rolls over from year to year. It's the only triple tax savings vehicle on the market today, meaning money going in is tax-free, any interest or capital gains are tax-free, and any distributions when used for qualified expenses are also tax-free. Couple this with your retirement savings vehicle, you have a powerful tool to save for your future. And again, a lot of people don't know this, but once you reach age 65, if you're in a position where you want to use your HSA dollars for non-qualified expenses, you can do so without penalty, just subject to regular taxes.
Thank you, Chris. And actually, just for everyone to note that an HSA is our health savings account here at Columbia, which is only available to a subset of our population that are under the HDHP plan and our medical plan. So we will talk a little bit more about this when we're talking about investing later on today, but just wanted to put that out there for everyone in case you were either, if you yourself don't have one, but have a spouse, or most other companies do offer one. And maybe this is something today that might pull a plug for something you might want to consider in the future. So thank you so much, Chris. And Tracy, is there anything that you'd like to leave us off with in terms of financial planning or budgeting that you think is important for us to know?
I think the panelists did a really good job highlighting and hitting all the key aspects of budgeting or planning ahead and the importance of doing that. And not only you don't set it and let it go, you have to do it on a regular basis and continuing to look at it and evaluate, because your needs and the things in your life may change over time.
Thank you so much. That's actually a perfect segue into like savings and our emergency funds. So what is this concept, you know, either Tracy, if you'd like to start us off, or Henali, in terms of like the concept of us paying ourselves first, right? We always hear this in the media, but what does that truly mean?
Yeah, I can quickly jump in. When you think about paying yourself, you're thinking about really just kind of making sure that you're covering all of your expenses first, right? You want to make sure that you're taking care of not only the things that you need to, like your rent, you know, your car insurance, things like that, but then also, you know, thinking about things that do make you happy, right? So whether it's setting aside an extra $100 a month for saying, hey, you know, I'm going to use this for entertainment this month, and making sure that you're really covering that ground. You know, I think Meghan said it best, but basically, if you're thinking about it from such a negative connotation, it can seem so daunting. So I think when you pay yourself first, you really want to make sure you're taking care of all of your base expenses, just what you need to live, right, and to exist. And then you're also just thinking about, hey, like, this is something that's important to me. This is what makes me happy. And we all have that. If you eliminate that one little thing, whether it's your coffee or maybe it's your gym membership, you know, I think that maybe you can evaluate and say, hey, like, let me maybe get a lower gym membership or switch gyms that might be more cost effective. But if there are these little things that really just get you up in the morning, get you through the day, and they make you a better worker, they make you a better person, then you want to make sure that you're accounting for those things as well.
Thank you. And so even right in the day and age we live in, it's maybe some of us are currently living paycheck to paycheck. So how can we even think about starting to build an emergency fund? If Tracy, you want to kick us off with that one.
Yeah, no, I want to just reiterate something that Meghan said earlier, and sort of the psychology behind money and just the importance of being able to sleep at night and have peace of mind, and knowing that you have funds that are available for emergencies and have some sort of savings. So even if you're living paycheck to paycheck, Some things that you can do is set up automated savings. So even if it's just $5 or $10 or $15 a week, having an automatic transfer to some type of savings account, so sort of that forced savings that you want to make sure that you have in place. Continuing to sort of assess that budget and track your expenses and view your discretionary expenses and see, oh, can I cut back here, or how do I think about my overall spending? And then just set some goals on what you want to achieve and make sure that you're hitting those goals. And if you get some type of great tax refund or some type of bonus payment, that's also a good opportunity that you can think about allocating that to some type of savings fund as opposed to just taking it and spending it. So I do think that you can take necessary steps. You have to be disciplined about it. But even if you just put aside a little bit a month, you can see, and we'll talk a little bit about, compounding interest and savings later on, how that could accumulate over time.
Thank you. Is there any general rule that you would say to save money for either, let's say there's unexpected bills that may pop up outside of our, as Henali said, savings for what we already know is coming day to day?
So I would say that certainly for saving money, you have to think about, are you single? Do you have family? You want to make sure that you have at least sort of, some people say, 3 to 6 months of expenses in a savings fund. So you have to think about what your upcoming needs may be. And then have goals that if for some reason your paycheck stops or you have unexpected medical expenses, that you have enough in the savings account that then you can take care of it and not have to worry about it.
Thank you. Henali, do you have additional insights for us?
Also, just kind of think about, what your company might be offering and kind of just making sure that you're maximizing on that. So for example, if they're providing you with additional commuter benefits and things of that nature at HSA, like we talked about, just making sure that you're at least fully utilizing and maximizing that in terms of how to save. Because while it might seem like an upfront expense, right, you're not having to pay taxes on them, and that might be a huge savings for you down the line if you're thinking about it from a holistic standpoint in 10, 20 years. Every penny can count. So I think that really just making sure you're evaluating also what your other sources of income and savings could possibly be. A lot of times your employer is probably providing you with benefits that you might not even be maximizing or utilizing to the full potential. I think that I see that happen more often than not. So definitely take time to make sure that you understand your benefits. If you don't, HR is always there to help you out and really just try to maximize on them.
For that. And thank you for the plug. HR appreciates it. Dr. Lurtz, is there also a way you may think about this for us how do we save for these unexpected bills?
Yeah. This is going to be kind of a different way to think about this, but I think one of the best things that we can do for ourselves is to find a partner. Like whether it's somebody at HR you can talk to, whether you talk to a CPA or a financial planner, or whether you talk to your friend and just say like, look, it's important to me to have a savings account and I want to have X dollars in that savings account. It's probably also important to you to also have, X dollars in your savings account. Let's be each other's accountability partner. Let's talk about this because there's going to be days when it's hard. There's going to be things that happen. There absolutely will be setbacks on that journey. And when you can have a decision partner to say like, yeah, like I was doing really good and then I had to buy new tires, or everything was going fine and then my cousin decided to get married, like things happen in life where we have to spend money. I mean, it happens. And sometimes they can be great. Maybe the cousin's party was actually fun. But the thing is, what really matters is that you have somebody to talk to about it. You have somebody to help you get back on that horse That's usually the hardest thing. People, when it comes to the money, they know that they need to save. Everybody knows that an emergency savings account is an important thing to have. It's not, is it or is it not? It's how does it get done? And sometimes it can be very helpful to just have an accountability partner, a decision partner, whether they are a financial professional or whether they're just your friend, that's trying to build up a couple hundred or a couple $1,000s in their savings account so that they can sleep at night, and here we're wrapping back around to this idea of financial wellness, being such an important part of well-being. Yeah. Money as an insulator from pain. Yeah. Like these are real big emotions that are really important, to address. And it can be sometimes very difficult to do that on your own. And so I would encourage you to find a partner, find a friend, find a CPA, find a financial planner, find a financial counselor. A lot of times banks, like wherever you bank, they have financial counselors where it doesn't even cost money to talk to them. Like it's actually just part of the services that are provided by the bank, and they don't necessarily advertise that, but you can talk to them, and it can be a great way to get a spending plan set, set up that automatic debit, that Tracy was talking about, and get started. And just a little bit, just like a tiny step, can make a huge, just saving like $20 every month, by the end of the year. And the way the interest works, you'll be doing pretty good. You'll be on the path. And I think that feeling good about, about your financial life, and sometimes being able to talk to another person during that transition phase, and certainly during setbacks, and certainly to celebrate, save your first, I don't know, $1,000. I'm not saying go buy $1,000 bottle of champagne, but hey, get your friend who's also on this journey with you to buy, a spritz, come over, we celebrate, like it's important to celebrate those milestones as well.
Thank you. And Chris, do you have any other, from your point of view, ways that we can also account for this and save?
Yeah, well, so I was thinking about this, and according to an article on Bankrate.com in January 2024, it says that only 44% of adults are prepared to handle even $1,000 of unexpected expenses. So that's especially concerning when you think about the rising costs of medical care. What I'd like to say is that regardless of where you are in your healthcare journey, even if you're say 55, it's never too late to open an HSA and save for your future. Like for example, a 55-year-old who's 10 years away from Medicare eligibility, assuming this account holder contributes $3,000 a year to his HSA, uses $1,500 a year in medical expenses, and earns a 7% year interest on investments, and reinvests all their earnings, that HSA balance could grow to around $22,000 by the age of 65. And additionally, at age 55 and older, account holders can contribute an additional $1,000 catch-up contribution, which the IRS allows, which then even more greatly extends your ability to save for the future. So as I said in the beginning, when coupled with a retirement vehicle, the HSA is both a spending and savings vehicle, and can also serve as a rainy day fund for both medical, unexpected medical expenses, expected medical expenses, or if necessary, because you own the HSA, you can use it any way you want if you are willing to pay, for example, a tax penalty. You can't do that with an FSA, for example.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Which is actually going to wrap us in again neatly into debt management, right? As one of these components of financial wellness. So, right, we're talking all about our savings now, but what about our debt? Because debt always has such a negative connotation. Like, do we need debt? Is this important to us as well? But why does it have such a negative connotation? Actually, I want to start us off with Dr. Lurtz, knowing the psychology behind this.
Yeah, actually, for anybody that's interested, I'll add this to the book list. I just thought of it. There is a book that's called Payback by Margaret Atwood, of all people, that goes that goes into the relationship and the history of money, in particular debt. It's super interesting. But to that point, like there's a lot of shame associated with debt, a lot of stress associated with debt. And the first thing I would say to that is not all debt is the same. You know, even in life cycle hypothesis, which, not to get too academic-y, but life cycle hypothesis is basically like, you don't have any money, so you have to borrow it. Then you pay it back. Then you start to save. Then you have this nest egg, and then you spend it down. This is what financial planning is based on. And so, you know, taking out debt for a house, you know, taking out debt for education, taking out debt for a car, you know, these are things that are completely acceptable to be taking debt out for, and you don't necessarily need to, I would argue, feel any shame. In fact, I think that feeling shame and not talking about debt and not being responsible with our debt, because even though that there can be healthy debts that we have, it becomes very problematic when any debt is left unmanaged. And so being cognizant of the debt you have, realizing that this is a part of the life cycle that we have with our money, and that the most important thing is to be aware of it and to manage it. And that we don't necessarily need to feel shame about it, because when we feel shame about it, then we don't talk about it, then we don't get the help or support that we need to get through it. And I think that is really the bigger piece for me that comes up with debt. Although I know that Henali and Tracy both have other thoughts as well.
Yeah. Yep, which is perfect, because I wanted to actually ask Henali, how should we best start to pay down debt? Like, where do we start? Or, you know, again, your thoughts around that. Apologies.
Yeah, thank you. So I would say where I would really kick off, you know, evaluating debt is when you're buying things on your credit card, don't buy them unless you know that you can pay it off at the end of the month. Your credit card should be thought about as just a vehicle of not having to carry cash, right? At the end of, you know, if you really think about the beginning of the credit card, right? Like that's why we were using it, right? We don't want to have to carry up all those bills, right? So if you're going to be using your card, then make sure that you are only using it to purchase things that you wouldn't be able to purchase because you don't have cash with you. And so with that mentality, the goal is that at the end of the month, right, you're able to pay off all of your credit card bills and not overspend, right? I know that there, you know, so many people are out there with credit card debt, you know, and it's just because they're buying things, using it, and they're not able to pay it off at the end of the month. The other thing that can get to you is also those afterpay methods that you see, right? When you're making a large purchase online, it's very easy to say, oh, I'll use the Sezzle or the Affirm, or, you know, those to kind of help me pay things off in increments. And while there's nothing wrong with that in the case of an emergency, when you actually do need to use it, I would probably stray away from using that on a regular basis just to purchase things that you kind of want to have versus a need to have. So again, I just really would look at where you're spending and seeing, hey, like if I can cut these down, am I able to kind of cut down on my credit card expenses? And then hopefully does that allow me to be able to pay it off at the end of the month? You know, because you can pay off your coffee at the end of the month, right? But, you know, maybe you don't need to buy or go out to that big fancy dinner, right? You know, unless you're celebrating something. But, you know, just really just evaluating where you can say, hey, I don't need this right now. I can wait for a bit. Right now, this is what I can charge on my credit card and pay off at the end of every month. So that's what I'm going to try to stay within in terms of a range.
Thank you. And Tracy, do you have insights to add to this as well?
Yeah, I would say, you know, for credit cards, if you can pay off your balances on a monthly basis, that's preferred and ideal, because what you find with credit cards is that the interest rate that they charge for outstanding balances can be quite high. And if you're not paying that off over a period of time, then that continues to grow. And that's how that debt seems to accumulate very, very high. So for those with credit card balances, what I would suggest doing is one, making sure you're at least meeting that minimum payment. And then I would go through the debt and see, what has the highest interest rates that you're being charged, and try to start paying off those first, and really have a concentrated effort to make sure you're trying to get that down to a zero balance, such that you're not being charged a lot of fees if you're running a credit card balance. So I think that's one of the key things. I would say also create a spreadsheet. I know we talked a lot about planning, but I would track for every item that you owe and you have debt on, what you owe, what's the interest rate, if there's a minimum monthly payment, when things are due. So you can be very structured and organized about your debt and your debt payments to make sure that it doesn't get too high. So I think those are some of the things that I would certainly think about and prioritize. And certainly if you don't have a credit card balance, that's preferred, but for those who do, make a conscious effort to try to pay those down over time.
Thank you. That's perfectly said, because I actually want to jump us into the investment portion, because I know the compounding is your area of expertise. So in terms of investing, right, here at Columbia, we offer different investment avenues like a 403B for retirement and a health savings account for those on the HDHP medical plan, which again may not apply to all Columbia University employee groups, but it is a common offering out in the marketplace today for businesses. So it's also, again, valuable to understand its benefits. But Tracy, can you actually start us off with when should we start investing, and is it ever too late?
Sure. So can you, Camilla, bring up the slides? Because I think what I want to start with is just making sure that everyone in the audience understands the concept of compound interest, because it really is a fundamental concept to personal finance. So you make a deposit in the bank and you earn some type of interest return on that money. It could be 2%, it could be 3%, it could be 4%. And if you keep that interest you're receiving in the bank, what happens is you start to earn interest on that interest. And then, as you can see by the graph on this page, it grows exponentially. And in the long run, it can be a very, very big deal. So if you turn to the next slide. So how interest compounds really depends on three variables. So first, it depends on the interest rate. So if you're earning 10% on your money versus 2% on your money, of course you'll earn more if you have a higher interest rate. The second is taxes. So if you can invest your money on a pre-tax basis, such as through the 403B retirement plan, you have a higher amount of money to invest versus if you have to pay taxes up front. So I would rather have $100 to invest instead of paying 40% of it today in taxes to the government, and then only having $60 to put in the bank. And then the last variable is time. So if you turn to the next slide, I want to show an illustration if you compare putting away money at the age of 25 versus 35. So in the first scenario, let's say you save $1,000 every year from age 25 to age 65 in a retirement account, earning 7% a year. So you're investing a total of $40,000. That's $1,000 every year for 40 years. So by the time you turn 65, you'll have about $213,000 in your retirement account. In the second scenario, you're saving $1,000 every year from the age of 35 to 65 in a retirement account, earning the same interest. So the interest amount is still the same at 7%. So you're investing a total of $30,000. And by the time you turn 65, you'll have about $101,000 in your retirement account. So you invested $10,000 less in the second scenario, but if you wait 10 years to have made that investment, you essentially have over $100,000 less than what you would have had if you started investing at the age of 25. So this ties back to the power of the compounding of the interest concept that I spoke about a couple slides ago. And what I want you to get out of this is that there are benefits from investing on a pre-tax basis, and it's also never too early to start investing, and starting earlier is always better if you can.
Thank you. Forgive me, I missed my questions there. Thank you so much. So that is very critical too to the questions that are also being asked in the chat. So starting earlier is better, but of course it's also never too late to start investing. So I kind of want to jump into our for time's sake, for looking at a surprising item or service that we have in terms of like our age, right? Because it's actually one surprising thing as we age, we oftentimes don't take into account what we're going to need in terms of medical care, right? So in order for how can we be proactive in our investments in certain accounts that we have, and Chris, I'm going to direct this at you. So can you let us know how we can actually utilize that in the same way that Tracy was discussing savings for retirement, the earlier the better. But what about in like our medical avenue as well, which can actually be a surprise for most of us as we get older?
Sure. So I'll just simply talk about the investment opportunities that HSA participants have at Columbia University. So you can invest once you reach a threshold of $2,000 in your savings account in either mutual funds or Betterment. And Betterment is more of a set it and forget it investment vehicle where you just answer some questions up front and it sort of manages your investments for you. And the mutual funds are for Morningstar rated mutual funds, zero fees, $0 fees. And so what you can do is potentially increase your HSA savings over time. Of course, you do earn interest in your HSA savings account, although it is small. You do have the potential to grow your money more. However, investments, of course, are not FDIC insured, so there is potential for loss. But that being said, mutual funds and the Betterment options mitigate the risk pretty well. So anyway, if you were to need that money, you can move that money back over to your liquid account and be able to spend from it. What a lot of people do is use their credit cards, for example, and then reimburse themselves from their HSA. That's another way that you can handle unexpected expenses that need to be paid right away. So again, couple this with your regular retirement savings vehicle, you can see there's an opportunity to grow your money even further.
Thank you so much. So again, just to reiterate, Columbia does have two great avenues to that as well, in terms of your benefits. So with that, I'm actually going to pass it over to Sarah Loop, who is monitoring our chat, because we do want to get in some questions from the audience for you all. And I can see there's been quite activity in here. So with that, Sarah, if you'd like to kick us off on what some of the questions may be from the audience members.
Sure. Thank you, Camilla. Thank you to our panelists. The first question that came in is for anyone who'd like to jump in. I think there's just a request for some books that anyone on the panel would recommend for saving or budgeting. Any couple of top recommendations you can offer? And this question can be for Tracy or Megan or Henali.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? For whatever reason, my audio went out.
Yeah, the question in the chat is book recommendations from the panelists.
Oh yeah, I got a lot of those.
What would be your top to share?
All right. The one of the best, but like it's sold like 4 million copies or something like that. It reaches the New York Times list all the time. It's called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. It's a great book. I mentioned The Geometry of Wealth by Brian Portnoy. There's a book called The Behavioral Investor by Daniel Crosby. There's a book called Mind Over Money by Brad Klontz. I mentioned the book by Margaret Atwood called Payback. And there's a book, of course, now the name is escaping me, although this book is older than all the books, that kind of gets more into the psychology of, well, some of those books cover the psychology of investing, but just like an old school, really good one was a Random Walk Down Wall Street. Excellent book on investing, also Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow This is Daniel Kahneman's book, R.I.P. Daniel Kahneman. But all of those are fantastic resources for not only thinking about how do I feel about my money, but how does money work? And how does my brain work in connection with money, which is an interesting thing to consider. And all can be wonderful, wonderful resources for people that are interested in investing, interested in money, want to think about budgets in a different way, but also explore how they feel about money, which I would argue is a really important starting point.
Thank you, Megan. Can our panelists speak a little bit about the reverse of what was brought up earlier in terms of partnering with a friend or a partner or somebody in their life to help them build a financial plan or build a budget? The reverse of that is like how to navigate the challenges of letting some people go in your life who are not mirroring your values, who are not kind of supporting you, who are maybe putting you in situations where you're spending more than you're comfortable with.
I'm happy to listen to anybody else, but I feel like that one might be directed
That is
towards
in
me.
your lane, Megan. You should talk to that one.
Like, money is a microphone, among many things. And so when people spend, it says, these are my values. It says, these are the things that I care about. And certainly we'll meet people in our lives that care about other things, or their spending just kind of like doesn't jive with us. I would argue this is slightly differently from simply being in a different socioeconomic status. I'm not saying that that's not hard, but like when I hang out with my millionaire friends, I'm like, oh, look at this cute bag that I bought for $10. And they're like, look at this new Prada bag that was 10,000. It's cool, but if that bothers, like, I'm not going to be able to buy the new Prada bag. I'm going to buy the $10 one. And I don't look at my friends who are able to do that. I mean, we both bought bags. There's another book, if you're interested, that's called The Thin Green Line, that actually looks at the way the high net worth and ultra high net worth spend. And for example, the percentage, the big thing that comes out of the book is that the percentage of income, so like millionaires have cars and maybe they have a Lexus, whereas I am not a millionaire and I don't have a Lexus. I don't even know what my car is, something else. And, but the percentage of my income that my car cost is a very different percentage of income than the millionaire spent. The percentage of income, it's a much smaller percentage of income for the millionaire. And so in many ways, I've spent more of my cash flow on the car than the millionaire has. Now, this can be difficult, when you're friends with somebody that is in a very different financial echelon than you, and you're just simply not able to go on 7 trips to Paris a year. Okay. Does that mean you can't be friends with this person? Maybe, if that's bothering you, but at the same time, you just say, hey, we'll just go on one, and then be okay with that. So I think part of it is just holding your boundaries and knowing what's important to you. And certainly if somebody is spending in a way that, does not align with your values and makes you uncomfortable, yeah, I mean, there's no point in keeping that going. So I would say consider differences in ability, but also I think the bigger underlying thing is, does this match with my values?
That's great. That's so helpful. Thank you, Megan. There's a lot to think about there in that question and in that response. I'm looking through the chat, and there's a fair number of questions specifically around Columbia's 403B account and saving for retirement. So I'm going to collapse some of these and maybe turn this over to Tracy or Henali. So some folks are saying that, it's hard to put money towards their 403B here at Columbia and save for retirement. One of the reasons expressed is that they're worried about the market crashing. They're worried about the risk involved and how to balance that. And then on the heels of that, someone is saying that, they don't have a lot that they could defer. So what would be the smallest percentage that someone should start with? Is there, some guidance around, they just don't feel like they can tax defer any amount? What would be the smallest amount that you would recommend? Tracy,
You want me
Henali,
to take-
thoughts on
you want-
this?
you want me
Yes,
to take it?
please.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think you have to check with Columbia's plan to see what the minimum percentage is to defer. And if you can put, whatever you can put, even if it's a very small amount, just to get to used to having a retirement plan and thinking about saving for retirement. And then also, I believe Columbia has some matching. So I don't, have this, somebody in the HR department can certainly talk a little bit more about that, but that's an additional benefit that you can get from putting some money away. So I think that's one of the things to think about. Second, with respect to the market, yeah, we don't know if the market's going to go up or down depending on what happens tomorrow. But one is to think about this is a long-term investment, meaning this is something you're going to put away, and then maybe it's 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. Like this is going to be invested over a longer period of time. So that's something to think about. If you needed to get the money out, or could take, and you can't take the money out in a month, right? You'd be maybe a little bit more sensitive to market movements, but think about a longer term time horizon. Then also, you don't need to just invest it in the stock market. There's other investments that you can make in bonds that earn more of a fixed interest rate payment, etc. So working with a financial planner or sort of an advisor, they can help you think about how to structure some type of balanced portfolio based on what your ultimate goals are. So some people may say, oh, listen, I'm not going to look at this for 40 years. I want to put it all in equity, and that's okay. And other people are like, no, I'm closer to retirement, and I want to make sure that I have more of a known return on my investment that I'm not going to lose too much. So I think there's ways to structure your portfolio to reach your goals. But also I do think, if you can, as I said, even if it's just a little bit, just to get used to putting some money away, it's a good and prudent thing to be able to do.
And on the heels of that, Tracy, can you just speak a little bit about the benefit or the differences between a pre-tax and a post-tax contribution to someone's retirement account?
Sure. So with the 401(b), you're contributing your money on a pre-tax basis, but at the end, when you take out the money, you will have to pay taxes at that time. This is not something that you're never going to have to pay taxes on, right? So some people may say, oh, but maybe the tax rate is going to be so much higher in 30 years, and I'd rather take it out at a lower tax rate or pay lower taxes now. We don't know what the tax rate's going to be, but think about the compounding. Go back to the compounding. If you could put $100 away every single year for 30 or 40 years versus putting away $60 every year for 40 years, that compounding difference is going to get to the point that it's so big that I think even if the taxes go up, that at the end of the day, it could be enough of a difference that it's better to invest things on a pre-tax basis if you can today. But you will in a 403(b), you do invest it on a pre-tax basis, and then you pay taxes later. And then there are other plans that you put in money on a post-tax basis. And then that, depending on the plan, then you may not have to pay taxes once that comes out, like, a 529 plan, which is a plan that people use to save money for their children's education. But you do contribute money, after tax, but then when you're able later on to take that money out, and you have to apply it for, educational expenses. There's also ability to move some of that to an RIA, at a date if it's not used for a certain amount, but still you invest post-tax, and then later on you could then take it out. So it really just depends on the vehicle and learning more about each of them and what your opportunities are.
Thank you, Tracy.
A common thing that we say in financial planning is just try to pay tax when tax is cheapest. Which, to Tracy's point, you can't always predict, but Tracy was making the point, whether she said, she didn't quite say it explicitly, but there's nothing wrong with right now putting in both pre and post. Like it's okay to, don't want to put all your eggs in one basket ever. That's the whole point of having a diversified portfolio. Like think of it as diversifying your tax situation. If you're able to put, pay tax on some money and not pay tax on other money, 20 years go by, okay, you'll be in a better situation than if you would just like, okay, all my eggs in one basket. Like try to spread it out a little bit and try to always keep in mind, pay tax when tax is cheapest.
Thank
And
you.
I just really quickly want to add one last thing and emphasize one point. We're really looking at the long-term goal here, right? And I think Tracy just alluded to that as well. Think about it from an overall standpoint. I know it's very easy to think about it from like a month-to-month standpoint and saying, hey, like I'm no longer having that extra $100 cushion a month because it's now going into some kind of savings account. But if you think about it in 30, 40 years, you'll be so glad that you saved that $100 a month and put it into your 401k, or even if it's just that minimum matching amount that you're putting in there, you'll be so happy that you did that.
Excellent. So we are about 3 minutes away from the top of the hour. There are a fair number of questions that we're seeing come through in the chat that are specific to benefits at Columbia. And so I want to just let all of our participants know that at the close of this session, we will be responding to the questions that we see related to benefits. And they're all really good questions, but we can't get to them during the session, but we'll follow up after the session. And I think maybe we can just end by just asking our panelists where can folks that are participating today that want to find a financial advisor, how can they find a financial advisor? That seems to be a top question.
We've got some students.
Or financial planner.
We've got some students.
We have a lot of students in our program who are working professionals. Meghan and I are part of the Masters in Wealth Management program at Columbia, and our students are working professionals in the field of wealth management. And so this is what they do on a day-to-day basis. They work with people and they advise people and helping them think about financial plans and wealth management. So that definitely right, Meg.
Yeah, well, I would say our students are wonderful. I would say another great place is to look at the CFP, Certified Financial Planner. The CFP website has a Find a Financial Planner tool. That's a wonderful place to find somebody. If you are in a situation where, you don't necessarily have $500,000, because you got to kind of have some money to work with a full-blown financial planner. Although that's not always true. There is another website that's called XY, X, generational XY, XY planning. And there you can sort, and there are advisors that work hourly. There are advisors that do plans, for relatively inexpensive. All of them actually on the XY Planning Network have their CFP. This is kind of considered to be the gold standard as far as financial professionals go. So look for that. So go to the CFP website, go to the XY Planning Network, hit up Tracy and I. We can connect you with our students. Another great place if you're not quite ready for a financial planner or don't necessarily have a lot to invest in this moment is to go to the AFCPE website, which is the Accredited Financial Counselor website. These are wonderful people that can help with budgeting. If you've ever been through a bankruptcy, if you're just trying to get straight with your taxes for the first time, you've got a steady paycheck coming in, and they can advise on, hey, yeah, put some money into the 401k and they can, or the 403b, and they can look at the benefits and they can help you weigh those decisions. Financial counselors are fantastic. And go through a rigorous, that if you look for the AFC designation, Accredited Financial Counselor designation, they are wonderful resources for people that are just getting started that don't necessarily charge on assets, which is not always the case, but often the case with financial planners.
So I want everyone to just also know, don't worry, all that information, all the book recommendations, all that recommendations will be going out in an email. We'll have Tracy and Meghan and Henali summarize, and Camilla and I will follow up with the participants here, because that was a lot of fantastic information. So don't worry if you didn't jot down those books, because we will share that material. Camilla, any closing words for the team?
Just thank you, everyone. Just stay tuned for a follow-up survey, because again, thank you to our experts. And this also goes for our experts, for everyone who attended here today. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen in, to tune into us today. Please make sure to answer our survey feedback. It's really important to the work that we do here. It also helps us to get back to you to your questions you've asked here today. So make sure we'll also be sending out resources in that survey email as well. So with that, thank you all so much for your time here today. And again, we just all want to see you thrive. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.